to the third annual Food Justice Film Festival, sponsored by the Center for Biological Diversity. I'm Jennifer Molidor, Senior Food Campaigner with the Center for Biological Diversity, and I'm joined by my colleague, Linda Rico. Tonight, our discussion centers on the film, Return, Native American Women Reclaim Foodways for Health and Spirit, a film by Karen Cantor. So let me introduce our panelists today, and we're very grateful to be joined by the women featured in the film. Jennifer Gauthier is a community development educator who concentrates on returning to gardening as complementary to reinstituting the Menominee language. Andrea Spako is an exercise specialist for the Seneca Nation of Indians who uses her training to encourage her community to be more active and to eat a diet rich in fruits, grains, and vegetables. So welcome, and thank you both for being here with us.
It's good to be here.
Thank you.
So the heart of this film is empowering people to overcome current circumstances through eating as ancestors did, nutritiously and locally. Return offers an approach to confronting the diabetes epidemic now rampant in Native American communities. So, for example, one of the women featured in this film talks about how the infamous boarding schools attack the foods of Native peoples, specifically forcing the Western foods and food pyramids onto students, among all of the other atrocities. Part of that also meant that people depended then on the government for food and didn't have the freedom of their own foodways, their own cultural foods and heritage. So food has so much more meaning than just nutrients, although that's an important part of it as well as nutritional security. So it's also part of culture and language and heritage and the relationships and worldviews through food. So just to start out with a question for both of you, how would you define food justice? And how does it relate to your relationship to the land, for example? But what does food justice mean to you? Is it a useful term? This is for both of you.
Sure, I can answer that first. Food justice, the term, I was introduced to that, probably around the time of this filming that we did. And it reminds me of our infrastructure and where we live and what we have available to us and what is easily accessible to the people. And so for food justice is for us, to everyone, not just Indigenous people, but everyone to have a fair shot at fresh fruits, vegetables, healthy diet, and affordable. So that's what food justice means to me, and it becomes injustice when there are large corporations that seem to pollute the water, the air, the foodways that get in the way of access. So so I think it's so many layers, and unfortunately, I think it's a big problem in America.
So I guess similar along the lines of that. I think the language that we use locally is that food sovereignty, and we look at food as having our own Indigenous foods readily available, and it's a part of our everyday lives, and finding ways to have that available at supermarkets and our schools, at our community meals that we serve, and people really having a choice and a say where their food comes from, and having that less dependence on those big corporations. And we really saw a transformation in our food systems with the introduction of the pandemic. We realized how fragile our systems were, and there were a lot of people that worked really hard to make sure that our community had nutritious foods and Indigenous foods, and supported Indigenous growers and vendors, and it's continuing on. And I think that it's really interesting that I think like that the pandemic introduced a form or a way to provide that equality and like justice in our food systems.
Thank you. And in the very first Food Justice Film Festival that we started during the pandemic, since everyone was like isolated from each other, we wanted an opportunity to continue these conversations. We showed the film Gather, and they talked about, for example, how far many Native communities are from grocery stores and how hard it is to access food. So I appreciate you making that point too. And I want to follow up on that. But Jennifer, I saw you were recently the commencement speaker for the College of the Menominee Nation. I hope I'm saying that right. Earlier this year, and you received a prestigious award from the University of Wisconsin for Outstanding Women of Color. In this film, in return, you talk about how important traditional knowledge and stories are in relationship to food. So you were talking just now about food sovereignty, and I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about the community work that you do specifically.
Sure. So one of the focus areas, or where I really treasure and value spending time, is to create safe spaces for all of our community members to learn language and to learn culture, to be part of the environment, to pay more attention to the seasons and to the weather and all of the moons and everything that's in the sky, because they all connect to each other and they all tell us stories. And there was, you know, it wasn't always safe to learn. It wasn't always safe to ask questions. And I found that food is so healing, and there's so many stories and connections and memories with food, that this was a natural place for some healing to start taking place. So whether it's teaching about the basics of gardening or introducing language, food is just a really natural way for people to start building connections with the environment and medicine and intentions and feeling good. So a lot of the work that I'm doing relates almost 100% to that. So since the film, my work has evolved to introducing policies in different departments throughout the reservation that are steeped in the values that they're already practicing, but also helping them think about things through a Menominee lens, and the food values that we have and caring for each other. We're also intentional about thinking about the environment and the space, and knowing that there's so many places on this land that are places of knowing. And maybe our young people, and even, you know, people my age, like maybe we don't know and we don't remember, but, you know, we're trying to connect people to places like that again, and just make it a natural part of our everyday lives.
That's wonderful. Andrea, I want to ask you about your work as well. Aside from being an exercise specialist, you're also a yoga instructor and a plant-based chef, among other things. So with that, what has your journey been like, you know, reintroducing and teaching and encouraging plant-based eating and ancestral diets within your Seneca Nation community? And how have those changes, the way that you've seen it, positively impacted your life and your community's lives?
Yeah, since we did the film, I ended up staying home for a little while with my newborn, and I got a good taste of what a lot of people struggle with, you know, when they're at home and they're raising a family, and money is, you know, not not as you know, you're on a budget. So I had to experience that as well at that point for a couple of years. And so at that time I was just focusing on feeding my family, again, just plant-based foods. I was a consultant still, and promoting our traditional foods. And again, just like Jennifer, very connected to the earth. And, you know, when we are reminding our people that, you know, every time we gather, we always say the Ganonyo, and that's a Thanksgiving prayer to the Creator for all of the elements that we have. And I always pull that in whenever we talk about food, because again, to stay connected to the food, to Mother Earth, and the resources, you know, we have to make good choices that also promote health for Mother Earth, and not to abuse it. So I did those things throughout and continue to pull in more community members, and it's definitely impacted people here and there. And then I actually, during COVID, went back to school and got my master's in clinical nutrition at the Southwest College of Naturopathic Medicine. And I did that for 2 years while being back at home again. And our exercise room was closed down for 15 months. So I was back at school. And so now I have taken because I'm so I'm more of a medical based person, medical based exercise. So I pulled in the nutrition piece. And one of the things that I have been able to now do and serve and add to my role here in the clinic is to work with people that have type 2 diabetes, chronic kidney disease, especially stage 3. I'm really focusing on trying to push them more towards the plant-based meals, especially our traditional foods, to help, because they're at a fork in a road. And what we see, unfortunately, in our healthcare system is, not enough time, not enough education. So that's been a big concern for me. And I did lose an uncle and an aunt 5 months apart from each other in 2017 and they were, one was on dialysis, and he died at the end of his session, and my other aunt died from a brain damage from a stroke, all related to their diabetes complications. So it's been very personal for me. And even during the return filming, I had pulled my family together and made them a plant-based meal, and we had a nice discussion on. Unfortunately, we couldn't get that into our film, but I wanted people to understand the barriers that we have due to the historical trauma and situations. So I continue talking about it. I am, but now I have some more tools to help people really shift their numbers and improve their kidney health. So that's, and one thing I have to say is some of us, or some people in the community, unfortunately, they want dialysis centers on our reservation, so they don't have to drive out. But to me, I always think, that's not what we should be leaving our children, as a dialysis center, because that's what message is that sending. So I really, I hope that never comes to fruition here. And I hope that we can, bring the kidney diseases down, and, so that we can, we can have healthier lives and thrive, versus always, thinking about how to, save our kidneys when it's might be too late.
Right. I'm really sorry to hear about your family losses. That's really sad. I'm really sorry about that. But you were talking about barriers and some of those obstacles, and for a question for both of you actually is, it's hard, especially when there's so much culture and things that you're used to, and this kind of colonized diet and things, that are here now. But when you've been talking to your community members about switching back to an ancestral diet and going back to their roots, and really just trying to focus on plant-based to be healthier and, just more sustainable for your community, what have you seen that's been really the hardest thing or the biggest obstacle for them, in terms of making that change? And how were you able to overcome it, or how were you able to, kind of at least get them to take that first step in that direction?
That's a great question. It's a little loaded, and I'm going to try to keep it short. But one of the things that my aunt, who has passed, one that had passed, she taught me a lot about the barriers that she struggled with daily. She would show us, 15 empty bottles of pills and say, this is what I have to take every day. And I think there was so many layers there, because, growing up in, in a time where, again, due to the boarding schools, due to a land loss, losing some of our land base, where we had, we knew how to take care of ourselves and feed ourselves off the land. She didn't grow up that way. We already had, kind of, assimilated into, homes and after we lost some land, we had to assimilate and we had to go to work on the railroad and stuff. My grandfather was on the railroad, and so they basically adopted. My grandmother had 10 children, so so she, they had to live just by the fry bread that we talked about in return. It was like that's what she was making with lard, and that you said that was like a staple, that growing up. So that's 10 children, that had to grow up that way. And they did, of course, live off the land with some fish and things like that, but it wasn't enough to build a healthy habits. So I noticed with all my family, they are very, they know what they need to do, but they just can't do it. And that's what I've heard over and over and over, and talking with hundreds of my community members in my job over the last 16 years. They have a really hard time just making that, besides the fact that we still are really a food desert where we live. And again, access to healthy foods year round is not that great. So, and then food, like cooking skills. So that's why I went and got the cooking skills that I needed. And, I still continue doing food demos regularly in my community and introducing them, to some of the, again, beans. For some reason, people are not that excited about beans. So I've been really pushing beans, one of our sisters. But once they, just the other day, I did a bean salad, and they were like, not interested. But once they ate it, they were like, yes, this actually tastes really good. They were so surprised. So I think they're just, again, there's budget issues. They don't want to spend the money. Healthy food is too expensive mentality. And again, there's, again, like I said, multi-layers. And I do see with not only myself, but other people in the community, we have a Gauthier farms, which are our Seneca Nation. It's a new agricultural department that we put into place about maybe 5 years ago. And they are offering more, their farmers are traditional white corn, bison, so they're pulling all of our traditional foods, and again, just to help with the food sovereignty and getting them into our communities, into our elders. So there's change happening. It's not as fast as I want it to be, of course, but but it's happening. And so I think just little by little, we're making shifts here, one household at a time, really.
Thank you. Jennifer, did you want to add to that? Or I guess maybe I could ask you another question kind of related. You both work with children, and I'm a mother and a former teacher, and I'm just interested to know what your experience is like in terms of working with younger people, what their attitudes are like, or what the obstacles are, what are they excited about, and kind of how's that play a role in what you're doing?
So I think working with youth has been probably just one of the greatest experiences, and have learned so much from the youth that I've spent time with. And I feel that they're going to make the changes that we've all been working on for so long. They have a completely different view and have had different experiences where, like, language has been a lot more available and a part of their lives every day. They have a lot more of the culture with them. It's been taught in the schools since they started at Head Start, whereas my generation and generations before it wasn't like that. So I feel and see a different sense of the future from them. And as it relates to food, they're not afraid to try. And it's been probably the hook for them is to give them choice whenever we meet, to say, like, here's all of our Indigenous foods, here's the season, which one would you like to try? And then having them be a part of, like, food experiences, and them making recipes and teaching them about our ways, about intention, and your feelings go into what it is that you make, and having our youth, like, whatever they make, to not serve themselves first, but to like give what they made to somebody so that they start to get those feelings and those understandings of, you know, all of the health, like there's all these different health and well-being things that are a part of our food that are just beyond nutrition, that feed like our spirits and our minds and our bodies and everything. So that's been one of the really cool things about working with youth is just I'm really anxious to see what they do and where they take us.
Mhm.
You kind of touched on this already, Jennifer, but and I know it's hard to pick just one of these things, the question I'm about to ask, but in both of the areas of work that you do, what would you say is one of the most fulfilling parts of your work and why?
Probably being with anybody and sharing a recipe or, you know, wild rice or something, a language word, and whether it's with our youth or with our elders, and them having like a memory just pop up from that one little experience, and it starts this whole cascade of storytelling with everyone that we're with. So I think there's like memory in those foods, and when they taste it again, or if they haven't had it for a while, just over and over again, like I see that happening. And there's all these teachings and learnings that come out, and the stories keep going and going and going. So that's been amazing to see and be a part of, and nothing I could ever have imagined or expected.
And what about for you, Andrea?
Well, it's interesting because I've been, you know, in this exercise position for, you know, 16 years, and my favorite part ultimately is just connecting with my community members. We have 2 territories, so I work between 2, and I have learned so much from them, and they have helped me grow. You know, coming into to my job initially was, I just thought they wanted me to tell them what to do. And, you know, I just was here, you know, you just do this, do this, do this. I'm the expert. They're coming, you know, to me for advice and exercise and nutrition, all that, and a healthy lifestyle. But thank God over, you know, in time, I realized that it was me to, you know, stop talking, let them speak, let them tell their stories. And over that, even when they're telling their stories, they also make connections, you know. And then when I can, you know, help them dive, and I do some, you know, do absolute, you know, motivational interviewing, things like that, you know, they're really start to have their own aha moments, and I can see when they have, they start to bring awareness to their lifestyle and something, and just even picking one thing that they can change. And so, and that's where I've learned to, over the years, they have taught me to meet them where they are at. And so, and with that has built my foundation to continue learning, and just so that I can always, you know, be there to help them, and you know, wherever they're at in their stage. And so that's really been rewarding for me. And the funniest part is, anywhere I'm at, if it doesn't matter like where I'm at, if I'm in the supermarket or a restaurant or anything like that, they always hide their food on me. They're always like, oh, I was, you know, you're not supposed to see this. You weren't supposed to see this, you know. And it's always been this big joke in my community. Like, and I'm just like, I don't wear the white collar. I'm not looking to, you know, to get after you about your food. I don't, you know. So it's, you know, you enjoy your food, be just, you know, the mindfulness is huge. And in my yoga training, I've used that a lot, you know, to how to help people become just mindful, because then they can connect better to the earth. They can connect to their food and their bodies. And again, you know, we are obviously everywhere dealing with a lot of trauma. And so that's been my next thing to learn more about is, you know, is to be trauma informed. Because again, from starting out 16 years ago, was oh, here, this is all you need to do. It's so easy. So now, like, okay, what are they up against, day-to-day life? So yeah, there's so many layers to everyone's successes. And I think it's just been so rewarding. And after all this time, I'm still happy to go to work. I'm still here, and they're still happy to see me.
Good, I'm glad to hear it. Thank you so much. So we can learn more about your work, just little snippets on the website of the film returndocumentary.com. And just a reminder for our viewers that people can watch the panel presentations at foodjusticefilmfestival.com. You can sign up to watch the film festival. Will be September 15th to 18th. But I also want to just give you each the opportunity to share any other resources or websites or actions you'd like to draw attention to, or ways that basically people watching the films and listening to these panels can support you in the work that you're doing in any way that might take shape. How can we help?
I would love to see more stories from lots of different communities. There's just so much incredible work that's going on around Indigenous foods throughout the world. That there's this value and connections and understanding that those things are there. They're waiting for us. They're waiting for us to reconnect with them, and there's just an awakening, yeah, I would just really love to see so many stories. I've met so many people in the last however many years, and just I'm always amazed and inspired by the work. So just I'd really like to see like more and more stories told from different communities. I think one of the something that through the Division of Extension that we created with a team is it's called this Harvest of the Moon curriculum. And it's this moon-based eating guide that highlights Indigenous foods specific to Menominee. We provide a cultural teaching that's in our language. We provide Menominee language words about the food. We always have some kind of hands-on activity recipe, and it's just beautiful. It's a Menominee art all through the entire resource guide, and we're just really proud of it. And I think it's like a step in for teachers and other educators to bring that into the classroom and bring it into the schools. So really happy about that and proud of that. And we've started to do recipe samplings at our farmers market. So we'll create the recipes, community can come in and taste it and try it. And then we'll give them like the main ingredient for that food so they can go home and make it. And so we're just finding all these really different ways to connect people and to encourage them to eat our Menominee foods again. So check it out. It's online.
Where can people find more information about that?
So if you do a Google search of UW Extension Menominee County Nation, there'll be a link on our main page. And it's the Kemamacheta Harvest of the Moon.
That sounds amazing. I'm definitely going to check that out. Thank you. Andrea, what about you? Is there anything that you'd like to share that people can look into, or ways that we can support you?
Well, right now, I'm under our, I'm just working through our Seneca Nation health system. I want to thank, Friends of Ganondigan, and they were the ones that started the White Corn Project, which was, again, revitalizing our Iroquois white corn. And inspired by one of our Seneca elders who has passed, John Mohawk. And so he was all about our corn, and they revitalized it. And now we've got Gauthier Farms, which is the Seneca Nation Agricultural Department that I mentioned earlier, who, they got that harvesting again. So, I mean, it's I don't know necessarily as far as to take it to an organization or online, but I would say that one of the things, if anyone wants to help with, is, we do not have our own food, like our plate. with our foods on it. And I've always wanted to do that. A cookbook, even a cookbook, not even just for ourselves, but like, I like the idea of, tribal foods, like in one cookbook and different, from all over. And I love the idea, Jennifer, of that curriculum that you have, because I'm that way as well. I just feel like I'm a teacher, and I want more curriculum-based education tools. And so I think those are the things that will help. I've done, in the past done groups, and we did a Way of the Circle through the Indian health system, and that was a huge. The retention is amazing when we have groups and that we meet weekly, that can talk and support each other, share stories, share methods. If this is how we got through a barrier. So yeah, I mean, so sorry, it's just those are just the things that we need to have more of in our tribe and in the Seneca territory, is just to focus, to get some curriculum and our plates, and to say this is our food, so that's kind of where I'll always be pushing for.
It's good to put those ideas out there. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, thank you both for your time and for everything that you do and for speaking with us briefly today. I really appreciate that. I think will be really helpful for other people to hear your stories, and I hope can support your work. It was nice talking to you.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, why went
Thank you both.